Welcome back to another episode of 40 Facts About the 40K Universe. I am your host, Gershwin, and you are watching One Mind Syndicate. Today we continue talking about the orcs as we go through the list of different warbands inside Grukk. If you guys have any other suggestions of topics of Warhammer 40K that you guys would like us to cover, please comment down below. And if you're new to the channel, subscribe because we post Warhammer 40K content every single day. So the reason that I'm doing this is because I really want to give you guys a snapshot of what a proper wall looks like. Whenever you think of a WOG, you usually think of just a bunch of orcs, and that's about it. But there's more to it than that. There's subgroups, there's clans inside of more clans inside of a giant WOG. So I want you guys to take away ideas from this video as to how you can create your army now that you're going into 8th edition and make a proper army out of this video, or get inspiration from this video, I should say. With that said, let's get into 40 facts about the Warbands of Grukk. Once he had gotten a taste for power, Grukk brought all the tribes of Iraq to heel in a single bloody week. By the time he was ready to strike out into the stars, he had a sizable force under his control, and those few remaining greenskins foolish enough to stand in his way were crushed under the lumbering footsteps of his followers. These followers included Big Mech Grukk. Always close at hand, Grukk made sure Grukk was attacking the best worlds and keeping the tribes in line. Filled with all kinds of technological inspiration, Grukk always seemed to have another trick in his bag of scraps, often pulling something out at the last minute to turn the tide in favor of Grukk and his boys. When during the Battle of Bonewash, Grukk's skullcrackers were ambushed by rebel grots of the Red Toe tribe, it was Grukk's shock tractor truck that sucked up the diminutive warriors and sprayed them across the desert like green and red confetti. One of the most important warbands of Grukk were the Skullcracker Boys. Emulating the mindless rage of Grukk, the Skullcracker Golf Boys became meaner than ever. Wherever the hulking warboss charged into the fray, dozens of his boys were always close at hand, their bunched green muscles and cruel, beady eyes reflecting the rage and violence of their leader. Over time, the biggest and strongest of the Skullcrackers formed a personal bodyguard for Grukk. These skull knobs covered in scars and trophies from their many victories. Grukk was not alone in this war. Other orc leaders followed in his footsteps, beneath him at all times. One of these leaders was Captain Dakbad's Flashgits. The firepower of the Flashgits was once the bane of the Skullcrackers until Grukk turned them against his enemies instead. Captain Dakbad, in particular, knew a good thing when it came up and punched him in the face, siding with Grukk and riding the wave of carnage and loot all the way to Sanctus Reach. It also helped Dakbad's position with Grukk that the warboss needed his ships if he was ever to get off Iraq. And of course, no orc war is complete without warbikers. The Wasteland Warbikes joined in with Grukk. Many of the orcs of Iraq roared to war on mechanized chargers, built from the rusting remains of the hive cities on the long-deserted human worlds, and the revving of engines of thousands of bikes heralding the tribe's arrival. Along with the warbikes, scrap trucks joined in Grukk. With such an abundance of scrap metal on Iraq, the mechs not only built bikes and battle wagons for their bosses, but also trucks by the scores for themselves, so that they could tow it back to their workshops. Most of the war on Iraq before the rise of Grukk were over scraps. Orcs from every tribe, both fighting for and fighting with bits of twisted metal or parts of engines. More than one orc was bludgeoned to death by a tire or impaled on a rusty set of bike forks during some turbulent times. Once free of Iraq, Grukk raided worlds all over the edge of the Sanctus subsector, all the while gathering more orcs to join in with his unchecked rampage. Drawn by the promise of piles of teeth and war On an unimaginable scale, thousands of freebooters joined Grukk, their vessels allowing him to strike when and where he wanted. These became Grukk's Sanctus Raiders. The first freebooter to fall with Grukk, Dakbad and his pirates, formed the vanguard of the Orc Raiders. Dakbad's ships had spent years raiding the world surrounding Iraq with a reckless violence typical of any freebooter worth his bloodthirsty reputation. When Grukk offered the captain a chance to share in the riches of battle, Dakbad didn't take long to be convinced. Those worlds that had once been too well defended or too strong for the freebooter fleet to attack alone would now fall under the meaty fist of Grukk. Drawn to Grukk's wall by riches untold, Gashrak took over as war boss of the Splitgrin tribe, ripe for some rough leadership after Grukk staved in the skull of their last boss. The Splitgrin tribe quickly fell into line behind Gashrak. In the time-honored tradition of the Bad Moons clan, to gain leadership of the Splitgrins, he bribed most of his knobs with the best guns and choppas Teef could buy. Those who did not fall into line soon found themselves the targets of their former commander's new arsenal. With all his teeth and connections, Gashrak took control of a squadron of Dakajets. Their screaming engines filled the skies above the worlds Grukk attacked. Notorious show-offs, the Splitgrin Dakajets could spend almost as much time barrel rolling and diving down from the skies as going where Grukk told them. Even so, as soon as any enemy fighter appeared, the Dakajets would fall on them like locusts, their hammering guns and howling jets filling the sky. There were a huge number of snakebites in this great wall, but none meaner than Bogrot Bones and his pet gargantuan Squiggoth, Stompy. In battle, Stompy lived up to its name, trampling entire companies into the ground under its bulk, often oblivious to the mayhem it was causing. The small-brained beast could only concentrate on one thing at a time, and was easily confused. Bogrot's Bones would yell and bawl, trying to goad him into going where he wanted, though Stompy, often seeing something shiny, would thunder off in a random direction. This happened on numerous occasions during the Great Wall, the huge monster either turning the tide of battle inadvertently or causing carnage among the orc hordes as he crashed through his own allies. To learn more about Stompy and his stories, please check out our 40 facts on Squiggoths. Though none of the other orcs liked them, the weird boys, like Big Red, did their bit for the wall, blowing up heads with their raw psychic power. In battle, the weird boys would vomit forth raw warp energies, overcome with the might of the wall. This could have all manners of unforeseen consequences as their psychic powers ran amok. Heads would burst like overripe fruit, limbs would snap like twigs, and organs rupture as pulsating shockwaves of power rolled out from the weird boys. Big Red was the worst of them, and the other orcs didn't like to hang around the odd-looking weird boy, even when he wasn't thrashing about and babbling like a brain-damaged grot. Strange things followed Big Red, like a lingering stench, mumbling and snashing. Big Red himself didn't seem to mind, as he was always muttering under his breath and talking to things only he could see. Another great leader of Grukk was Wingnuts. Wingnuts was a sky boss of the Flyboys, a huge formation of Dakajets, Burnabombers, and Blitzabombers, which would darken the skies in the vanguard of the Red Wall. So eager was Wingnuts to get into combat that his boys would lash their planes to the other side of scrap ships, cutting them free as they fell through the planet's atmosphere. The Flyboys would then plague the skies of the world, shooting down anything in their sight and dropping bombs on targets below. Wingnuts himself became notorious for his death-defying strafing runs over battlefields, his Dakajet passing only a few meters above the heads of startled orcs and their terrified enemies alike. The war boss, Badfrag, led many of Grukk's armored and shooty wagons, lots of them pinched from the Humies, but made even more killy. Often the first thing to hit the ground when Grukk invaded a planet, Badfrag's looted wagons would rumble forward, smashing anything in their path in a rising tide of rusted metal and flame-belching barrels. On Fennel's 9, Badfrag led the charge across the ancient energy bridge connecting the Hive Primus to the world's jungle-choked mainland. Ramming through the Imperium's defenses, Badfrag sent scores of enemy tanks tumbling off the bridge and into the boiling seas, hundreds of meters below. In the aftermath of the battle, Badfrag used mobs of grots tethered to cables to fish out the wrecks so he could press them into service again. One of the most deadliest things of Grukk was Grukk's prize, Gorkanauts. They had a fearsome and well-deserved reputation for carnage. These towering engines of death were always at the forefront of any battle, their claws and guns ripping into the foe. Inside their well-armored hulls, the grinning knobs would try to outdo each other, killing enemies in successfully more specular ways, or racing against each other to be the first to get into the fray. By the end of the war, each Gorkanaut had amassed an impressive tally of kills. And those were 40 facts about Grukk. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and like I said in the beginning, this is for you guys to get inspired and really add on to your orc warband or your orc wall. I know as an orc collector, sometimes you get overwhelmed because it's just so many boys, but don't forget about the toys, like they say. So flash kits are always really fun to paint and are always really fun to just fluff up. I know I really like to give each one of my units their own little background lore, and sometimes it's difficult to do that when you're playing huge numbers. So if you have like truck boys and what have you, you could clump them all together and say, all my truck boys are part of Wazbag Truck Boys clan or something like that. It really adds to the game that you're playing if you in your head kind of see your army as an actual WOG army, where like you have individual units with their own background lore. But again, guys, it's just inspiration. You could take it, or you could just enjoy the lore. If you guys have any other suggestions of topics of Warhammer 40K that you guys would like me to create a video for, please comment down below. Don't forget to like, comment, and share for all your orc players that you know of. Share this on their Facebook, Twitter, whatever social media they use, and let them know that their WOG needs improving. Thank you guys so much for everything, and I'll see you tomorrow. This was Gersh1 with One Mind Syndicate, signing out.